Hello, this is Richard, and this is my weekly gaming news brief. The Diablo open beta is the top of the news. This is the one that didn't require you to sign an unholy pact with the kernel in exchange for a sacrifice of high cholesterol and high blood pressure. This beta was pretty great. I didn't have to do a double down happily, and in review I came into this one as tabula rasa. I didn't play Diablo Immortal or hadn't played Diablo 3. The last Diablo I played was 2, which I have fond memories of the first game's hero growing weaker as the imprisoned Diablo gained control over him and eventually sprung forth from his head. That being said, what I played so far is engaging, fun, and rewarding with positive feedback heaped on you with ever-progressing loot and capabilities. The opening cutscene is just as brutal and well made as when it was first released. The birth of Lilith is beautifully gory, and she comes off as so alien and imposing as she pushes through the gossamer veil of viscera to stand with translucent flesh seemingly glowing from within, as you can see bones and all. Blitzer's full motion animation is still stunning. I hate to spoil this, but I am too excited about it. There's a Hellraiser reference in a side quest. Pleasant surprise. I'm going to credit Jess Corden from Windows Central giving me the inspiration to play Diablo 4. I wasn't too enthused about it. The last Diablo I played was 2, and since moving from PC to console, I just haven't had the faith in the series to allow for the frantic reactions that you need with keyboard for. I was sorely wrong, much to my controller's detriment. My only hope is after the beta, they're not going to change the leveling ramp. I found it rewarding and consistently giving you abilities. Leveling occurs at a rate that you don't feel the grind, and loot lust is so often sated. I can't wait to play the full game. Speaking of double downs, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has new gameplay released. The team at Nintendo appears to be doubling down on the creative abilities from Zelda Breath of the Wild. The new gameplay showcase gave us a good look at the game world as well as 2 new powers for Link, Fuse and Ultra Hand. These powers enable Link to combine objects in creative ways to make weapons and vehicles. In the gameplay teaser, they show Link taking a basic stick and fusing it with a heavy boulder, making a large one-handed mace. Ultra Hand, a mechanic name for a toy made by pre-video game Nintendo, Link was able to make a swamp-skimming airboat using logs fused to an already existing fan. Now Creedence Clearwater Revival, born on the Bayou, has a place in Zelda, so it appears Nintendo has taken cues from the creativity of its fans. In Breath of the Wild, innovative players were able to make an airship using minecarts and the Magnesis ability. This looks like an evolution from that experimentation. More intricate weapons can also be crafted, such as homing arrows using a monster's eye grafted onto an arrow with the fuse ability. I do like the art style in Zelda in general. I know cell shading and that appearance can be divisive, but I think Nintendo pulls it off. It is definitely in their wheelhouse, and as far as level of detail in a lower polygon game, they do well with textures and the scenery is full and diverse. Looking upon it, there are massive peaks and floating islands in the sky. Much like the now old adage, you see the mountain in the distance, you can climb it. Well, you see the floating island above, you can make an airship to go to it. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is already building on a winning formula and set of mechanics. I believe this will flesh out the world greatly and give a lot of player options and choice. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin graphic novel is being adapted into a third-person action RPG in the vein of God of War by an unnamed studio. Being this has only been announced recently, there's little information on the game other than that. I'd project it being at least 3 to 5 years from release if it's targeting a similar scope and size as the newer God of War series. If you're unfamiliar with The Last Ronin, it is the Old Man Ninja Turtles comic by the original creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. The Ninja Turtles comics are similar to the pizza-loving teens of the cartoons in looks alone. Otherwise, they straight up murder some of their adversaries in the comics. The Last Ronin is an excellent riff on the last hero standing trying to make that one final act of revenge. I recommend the book. Even if you're not normally a comic fan, the story is well told, both sad and hopeful and full of action. I'd picked it up after listening to the reviews for it on the Pop Culture Philosophers channel. If you're even passively interested in comics, I would check them out. Robbie there gives excellent, well thought out, and enthusiastic reviews. Respawn Entertainment of Titanfall and Jedi Fallen Order fame is working on a Star Wars FPS based on Dark Forces. The original Dark Forces harkens back to when Doom was the biggest name in DOS shooters. He plays Kyle Katarn, a Rebel Alliance spy not unlike Cassian Andor, who is an ex-Stormtrooper in this case. Dark Forces spawned the sequel Jedi Knight, which follows Kyle on his journey becoming a Jedi. This is an awesome shooter. Started as a Doom clone set in the Star Wars universe with a pretty decent storyline. As the series progressed, you gained Jedi powers to accent your shooting abilities. Hopefully with their Titanfall and Apex experience, they'll bring interesting Jedi-inspired traversal, solid shooting, and well-crafted individualized force powers. Very intriguing, and with Respawn helming it, I have high expectations and hopes. Rumblings started early this week about E3 not happening. This occurred after it was found that Ubisoft is going to back out, mainly because ReedPop, the company running E3, had not solidified their plans. It was then found that both Tencent and Sega had also dropped out. These publishers, as well as a myriad of other smaller developers, had decided to let E3 go the way of the dodo, dying for bad choice and inability to adapt to new environmental concerns. Being that Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony were also not going to be on the main floor, E3 had all but obviated its need. Being that the last few E3s have been shrouded in minor controversy and not as grand compared in previous years, it's unsurprising E3 has come to this kind of end. Is it a permanent end? That is unknown at this time. ReedPop, who now handles E3 in lieu of the ESA, heads up PAX as well, so it's entirely possible to be able to reanimate the convention and evolve it into a community-oriented version of E3. However, with E3's demise, Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest ascends into its place, a virtual convention that developers and publishers can control all the information and not need to create large, expensive booths is desirable for developers. Not having a crunch and creation of vertical slices that in all likelihood won't be Frankensteinily grafted into a game takes a lot of stress off of devs and allows them to actually work on the game. The most important part of E3, however, will still continue as it has. The Devolver Digital Conference, the humorous un-E3 where Devolver unveils new games that they are publishing. Devolver is incredible with games like Death's Door, Weird West, and the upcoming Angerfoot. They publish some of the more creative and singular games that are released. They also inject some much-needed levity into the world. People forget that games are toys, and we're supposed to have fun with them. Those people are stupid. Games are fun. Have fun. The exact opposite is what I want to talk about now. I like to give a brief talk about something I enjoy outside of gaming as my sign-off. This time, it's the Punisher. I admit I am a big fan of the Punisher. Not in the way that people who wear the Skull logo are. I like the Punisher the same way I like Jason Voorhees and Pinhead from Hellraiser. Frank is not a hero in any way, shape, or form, and this character knows it. Anti-hero, I think, is even generous. For anyone interested in the Punisher, I recommend reading Garth Ennis and his Punisher Max series. Start with the Volume 1 in the beginning, and then I recommend reading Born. Then continue the series chronologically until Nick Fury shows up. This is not Samuel Jackson Nick Fury. This is Old Man Nick Fury. After he shows up, pick up Nick Fury, My War Gone By Garth Ennis as well. And if you don't want to read The Punisher, I recommend picking up that Nick Fury book by itself. If you want a spy and war story dealing with brutality of war, Garth Ennis is the premier comic writer for this subject. As far as the Netflix Punisher series that was preceded by Daredevil, the only thing I can write home about is Jon Bernthal's performance. The rest is a fairly diminished exploration of the source material. They replaced the salacious, ruthless, cunning Rollins with a casting call for a bland, milquetoast old white guy. They could have asked PlayStation's Jim Ryan to play the character and it might have been slightly more imposing. I feel a video game version of Frank Castle would be a letdown. It's hard to describe, but if you read the books and see the extremity that goes on in that world, you would see how the wholesale slaughter of enemies that pop up like whack-a-mole is not compelling at all. The repetitive nature is almost comic in that way, and it would not capture the bleak apocalyptic nature of the comics, and their Conrad-esque exploration of the heart of darkness. So like I said, I like the Punisher, but not like a lot of people do. Thank you for watching this far, and be good, life's short. His next step is reflex action. So is the next one. Gotta be.